And here we are on Friday morning once more, and let's go and have a word with Pat McArt. How goes the struggle, Pat, in Donegal?
Grand Jude. Overnight we good old Donegal. This is the only county, no matter what weather we get it. There's snow lying on the ground outside, a fine dusting of snow, and
So
it's
that's quite picturesque to look out on.
well, it's absolutely beautiful, but try walking on it.
Well, that's the bad part. My wife would be the same, and I would be fearful of going out. You know, you'd fall on your bloody
Yeah.
neck. Anytime I see any ice, or the way a glint of frost on the side on the pavement, I won't go for a run. Because as sure as God made little green,
we have concrete out the back, Jude, and it's lethal, and I mean lethal. Rosie has fallen there and actually broken an arm. So
oh my God!
Going anyway. Yeah, some years back now, in fairness. And like if you go out there, it's skating rink, definitely.
Oh well, that's the challenges life throws at us, and it's up to us to meet these challenges, Pat.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we become better persons as a result.
Shut up.
Okay. We're going to talk about what's in the newspapers and on the telly and on the news generally. The big story this week, of course, has been the story of the Capitol. I like to refer to as the Capitol Keepers. It was in every newspaper. It was covered by. I watched it live on CNN. I don't know. Did you, Pat? Did you watch it live?
Yeah.
I think an awful lot of people did. And then in Channel 4 last night, 24 hours later, they give at least 40, 45 minutes to it out of an hour. So it really has hit the headlines. So what would you say? There's so many things you can say about it, Pat. Would there be any, if you pick a couple of things you think are most important about what happened in that
I'm just watching. I sat up to follow on from what you said. I actually sat up to after 2 o'clock on what was Wednesday night, watching it. I got so fascinated by what was going on and the whole thing. But I see this morning, Betty Devos, she was the education secretary. She's resigned. I can't remember the name of the transport secretary. He's resigned. Now, at Fox News or something tonight, there's I see some big statement from somebody. I'm not certain it's Fox News, but it's a media company owned by the Murdoch. Have issued a big statement condemning Murdoch and or Trump. And you sort of go, wait a minute. And the old term, rats deserting the sinking ship. Yeah. You sort of go, wait a minute. Hey, you enabled them for 4 years, and now it's suddenly he's overplayed the hand. But Jude, look at it like this. This guy was supposed to be so powerful. The Republicans, and not one of them, Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell, not one of them would stand up against him. But he's lost them the White House, he's lost them the Congress, he's lost them the Senate, and he's lost them the House of Representatives. Some achievement, and now he's toxic. And I see, I think one of the big publishing houses, there was one of the guys, I can't remember his name either. He was one of the senators that was trying to decertify the certification process. He had a book deal with some company, and they have pulled out this morning saying they won't publish his book.
Oh,
so it's all starting to pile in on people like Ted Cruz and so on. Jude, there was a major thing. People like Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell said the election wasn't even close, but Trump's supporters believe that the election was stolen from them. They really believe this, and they 70 million. That is one thing that I don't know what you think is, but the fact I was watching their CNN, they had a sort of reporter embedded with the protesters, and Jude, these people are insane. This election was stolen from us. God will give us, and you're going, are you a moron? And you sort of go, they really truly believe all this stuff. We need this 7 swing states. This is our capital. In other words, the people who voted for Joe Biden don't seem to have any rights in their mind. What's your view?
Yeah, well, I would share a lot of what you're saying. I think that preface it maybe with the fact that there's always been a kind of a disconnect between the rulers and the ruled, especially in American politics. I mean, the number of presidential elections I have watched or heard about where the sort of slogan, kick out the rascals, go and clear the swamp, where the people who were working as senators or as congressmen or women, they were seen as, by definition, obviously, the establishment and caring little for the small man. So I think that sort of backstory all the time, long before Trump, you know. The thing that caught my eye was Ted Cruz in the Senate. Was it the Senate he was? Yeah. He was going to call, in the name of being even-handed, he said we really should set up a commission to investigate whether the thing was, in Georgia particularly, whether it was fair. Nobody has anything to lose, he said. I mean, the thing is so crazy. Nobody said to him, well, they sort of hinted at it, that there's been I don't know, many dozen cases have been brought, and not one of them stood up. That was the first thing that struck me. There's some guys hang on to the last minute. It'd be interesting to see, will Cruz now denounce Trump? I suspect not. The other thing is that those guys are white supremacists. There was hardly a black face. I don't think there was a black face there among all those rioters. And the last thing that struck me is this: how come they were able to get into the Capitol building so easily? Now, there's something. Here's my theory. I think it's a bit wild, actually, but maybe I'm exaggerating. I think there's a possibility that the anti-Trump people, or a certain section of Republicans as well, thought it'd be best to show Trumpism at its worst. I mean, let the skunk go into the Capitol building and squirt all around, and let everybody see how horrible it is in plain daylight. And that'll really cut the ground from under the Republican politicians and force Trump to, draw in his horns. I can't think of any other explanation. It's inconceivable that they would be so incompetent that they would have allowed that to happen without deliberately.
Well, there could be also another explanation, much more simpler. There could be a good old bit of racism involved. I see that this morning or yesterday, the police chief in Washington has resigned. A friend of mine put up on Facebook on Wednesday night. The last time there was a Black Lives Matter march in Washington, there were serried rows of heavily armed troops, phalanxed along the steps of the Capitol building. This time, there was a thin row of policemen, lightly armed policemen. There's no heavy weapons or anything. I presume they had their normal on-duty pistols, but there was no submachine gun type things or automatic weapons. And there was something very strange, Jude. We were sitting watching, and even Rosie saying, "Look, there's something strange here. These people it's like a knife going through butter here." And this is supposed to this is a country that spends something like 37 billion on just even on police forces.
But Pat, why do you think? Are you suggesting that because of the contrast between the way they police the Black Lives Matter protests and the way they police these Trump fans, are you suggesting it was racism that they?
No, I'm suggesting that it was at least there was sort of a degree of white privilege. These people are allowed to protest in a way, and the police, treated it with kid gloves. And I think, these are our people, and so on. So there was even a cop apparently took a selfie with one of the protesters. Now that there wasn't much animus there, was there? Can you imagine if that was a black guy? Yeah, and the cops that have been. Jude, I have a funny feeling. Had that been Black Lives Matter and the riot would have been of such seriousness, there have been numerous dead on the steps of the Capitol building. I have very little doubt about it.
I agree completely, Pat. But I'm not.
But hold on, just one more point. How come these people were allowed to walk away afterwards? There was no mass arrests. They just drifted away. When there was Black Lives Matter, you saw guys with these plastic handcuffs on them being led away, and van after van, what do you call them, lockup vans, taking people away. None of that. They just walked away.
Well, there's two ways that police, it seems to me, or security forces, shall we say, can act when they're faced with a great mass of people. They can wade in there, and as they did with the Black Lives Matter people, and drag off people and, beat them down and cast and all the rest of it. Or they can do the softly thing. Now, I suspect, I kept thinking back to the early days of the civil rights. The thing that really made the civil rights movement massively popular among people was when the police attacked it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think that would have been in their minds, let's not get into too much hand-to-hand fighting with these guys, because that'll really rile the base and really get them out. So maybe there was a half part of it anyway, that they would let them go in, let them shame themselves. I mean, they couldn't have done it better if they'd been actors.
That is a conspiracy theory. I'll give you that, but it's also a good one, because they're, in other words, it's what's counterintuitive. Let them do what they, because you would say that would be a big mistake, but maybe somebody thought, go on, let them go. And the only thing, hey, by the way, it has definitely frightened the hell out of the American establishment, big time. How close all this came.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It worked. If it was intentional, it worked. It's certainly true that if the cops had waded into the crowd, it would have been better ultimately for Trump than the fact that they stood back and let them into the Capitol. Because that really was, I think, the death blow for Trump. I think the only question, though, is, and several people said this the next morning who had been on this demonstration, they said they were proud to have been there and to be associated with it. There's 70 million people out there. The question is, are they still fans of the things that Trump proposed? Or having seen that carnage or that nastiness or that just boorishness, the way they treated the seat of government, will they say, no, that's too far. I don't want anything to do with Trump anymore. Will there be fewer of that 70 million existing today than there was before the invasion of the Capitol?
I presume, Jude, here, look, one thing I did notice, there wasn't all that many American flags there. Most of the flags were Trump flags. It's a cult. These people, I think their definition of America as the Trump's version of America. There's one woman on CNN this morning. She says they're not going to turn my country into a socialist banana republic. And I was going, Jesus, what's wrong with socialism? If clowns like you are in charge, Jude, I'm sitting there watching this, and I really am going, these people have, they think socialism is a dirty word. They don't even understand what socialism means. Their ambulance service is socialism. You could start saying, do you understand? And you just sort of go, but there's all this sort of propaganda. And these people, Jude, look at some of the people who are in there. There's a guy on with a bear suit on. One of the guys on CNN this morning says there were some of them smoking pot. Like, were these serious protesters, or were half of them just anarchists?
Well, they all looked as if they're having a good time. I was also struck with the fact that there's a lot of people just wandering around. I think there was a guy out walking his dog. There was a guy who was jogging. There was a whole range of people. I think it actually was a fairly hardcore that smashed that window. And those guys, it's hard to believe it. Those guys must have known that their faces would be identified by security cameras, and the cops would catch them. I mean, if they did want to, they'll catch them. They're bound to be known, and they're bound to be caught, and they're bound to be penalised for what they've done.
But let's back up a wee bit. The speeches beforehand. Giuliani said he wanted hand-to-hand combat or something, or trial by combat or something. But listen, have you really listened to the Trump speech? Jude, that is absolute incitement. He actually said and he said, don't be weak, you have to be strong. He was basically telling him, when you go down there, he was basically saying you're going to have to sort of riot or push to get this thing stopped. Now, Jude, that is sedition by any definition of that term. He's trying to usurp the rule of law and order.
Well, I mean, Trump has always claimed, that there's nothing but fake news, that the establishment is telling you one thing and the truth is the other, and he's got the truth. So in a way, that's just a logical extension of it, If these guys are totally fake, let's go in there and show it. Perhaps he thought, that enough of them would have gone in And maybe with this, as with the civil, I hate to make a comparison, but with the civil rights, people would say, my God, these people are doing such drastic things. There must be something terribly wrong with the establishment.
Yeah.
Now, it didn't work out that way, but I wonder if that was in the back of their minds. Anyway, I think it is put paid to Trump personally. The question now remains, are the people like Ted Cruz and so on ready to take up the mantle and run with it? Because there must be a fair number of, I mean, you could lose half of 70 million and you'd still have a fairly sizable bunch of people behind
Yeah. The only thing, Judah, I'd say the apex is over and it's down the other side. You know, it's been shown now to be a very dangerous road to be going down. And back to repeating what I said earlier on, he's lost the White House, he's lost the Senate, and he's lost the House of Representatives. Some achievement.
Yeah.
And he lost the 2 seats in Georgia as well. In 2 Senate, like that proves. And remember, he kept saying there is no way we lost Georgia. Now the 2 Senate seats, they're nobody's claiming that there was any sort of wrongdoing there whatsoever. And the Democrats took both of them. So much for Trump saying it's impossible for Democrats to take Georgia.
And very, very significant too. One of them was a black man. And I heard a commentator saying that when Trump talks about electoral fraud, it's a kind of a dog whistle, as they say, about race. Because, they're saying that these black people are, involved in electoral fraud. They weren't there before and they're here now. What's going on? Essentially, this is what the guy was saying. I never thought of that the idea of electoral fraud tied into the fact that so many more black people were voting, and in many cases in swing states made all the difference.
The biggest party involved in electoral fraud by a mile are the Republicans. Check out, as I did some time ago, in Texas, there's quite a big black population. The governor of Texas only put in 1 polling booth in an area for someone like, what was it, 25,000, 30,000 people. And there were people standing online for up to 8 and 10 hours to vote. And if you've got a job or anything else, you can't stand online for 8 to 10 hours, particularly on the sun or whatever. So like this, at a place like Kentucky and Missouri, a lot of the black people were totally and utterly disenfranchised. That's why there was such this time. I think the black community, because of Black Lives Matter and because of George Floyd, there was a serious amount of, get the vote out and the black areas this time, and they all, by and large, come out for Joe Biden.
Well, I'm wondering why Democratic politicians of the Democratic Party don't make more of that. Don't go in and see what if there's only 1 polling booth for tens of thousands of people.
Well, I can't remember exactly.
Let's change that. They should be. I mean, that's right at the heart of what democracy is about.
But hold on, Jude. The governor of Texas is a Republican, and the senator is Ted Cruz. So, the federal government, unless the federal government takes over the running of the state, that's not going to change.
Yeah, but they could put it in the headlines. They could put it in the headlines and keep on harping on it. And I think the message will get through eventually. But the fact of the matter is, you hear it mentioned just as you've mentioned it now, and then it's sort of forgotten about. I mean, these kind of things, it's like gerrymander. It's at the very heart of things. You've got to get that straight first of all, before you're going to have a proper representation of the population.
I can't remember. There was one of the southern states, it might have been Alabama. Even the last election, there were black people standing in line literally for hours to vote. They just didn't walk in and say, my name is whatever, and go. And they stood in line. And those are all Republican red states.
Well, I think all things considered, that's 2 things. One is that it has brought this boil to a head. It has lanced the boil, I think, and maybe unintentionally, but that's what has happened. And the second thing is it's sort of, I don't know what you would call it, a bad thing to say, but it would be great television watching.
Oh, absolutely. But just finally, I'd love to know what's going to happen now. Will there be criminal proceedings against people like Trump? What will happen to Cruz and people like that? Will they pay a price? And what's going to be the outcome of all this?
I think if the Democrats are sensible, they'll not press that too hard because there'd be a danger of making a martyr of Trump. I mean, I'm sure he's done things quite clearly that could land him in jail. But can you imagine if Trump was put into jail I don't think that would dishearten his followers. It would only
what do
encourage
you call
them.
him? The young Trump Jr., Donald Trump
Oh,
Jr., or whatever. I think is
yeah,
it Donald,
yeah,
the young
yeah.
fella. He says this is no longer the Republican Party. This is the Trump Party. The arrogance of that,
Yeah, yeah. Well, it does seem to me that the establishment, or whatever you want to call them, the sort of more centrist element in the Republican Party has triumphed, and certainly the Democrats have triumphed. I mean, it is such a win to have won both those seats when everybody knew what was at stake. It's a huge tribute to the people that got the vote out. You know, it really is. So now Georgia, which used to be the very epitome of Republican conservatism, is now a swing state, and then probably swinging towards Democrats. Brilliant.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Okay, let's go nearer to home. And I was watching prime time last night. I don't know if you caught it, but they had the Education Minister, Norma Foley, on. You know, that very tall woman?
Yeah.
Wears the long skirts. I hope that's not being sexist. But it's hard not to notice it. Anyway, she was asked by the interviewer on prime time. You know this young interviewer? I can't think what her name is now.
No, I can't think either.
With the swept back hair. She was asked, Norma Foley was asked, did she consult the unions before she said that, you know, the schools are going to open for GCS or for leaving cert, special needs and stuff like that. Now, she said that she did.
No, she didn't.
Well, you see, why didn't the interviewer say that? And why didn't the interview press and say, you're saying something? This is the thing. This is how facts get twisted, and then they get into the mainstream. It's like this thing. This was Donald Trump won the election. So we keep repeating it. And it's very hard to think about things any other way. So if she consulted the unions or she didn't, if that interviewer knew that she hadn't, and I don't think they would have asked the question if they didn't, why didn't they press her and say, look, you're that's not true. That's simply not true.
There's a woman, she's, I think, the ASTA, and there's another guy, John Boyle, I think's his name. He sounds like he's from Donegal. He's the president of an INTO, I think it is. I was listening to them yesterday. They said, right, wait a minute, it's not safe enough for the dog. It's not safe for anything else. But they're telling teachers, it's all right for you to come into a class with maybe 30 pupils and, this new variant and all. So they're saying, are you people serious? And it's quite clear, Jude, that the government hadn't talked, and there was the Boyle and the woman whose name escapes me were on yesterday, and it was quite clear they hadn't a clue. In fact, they said had been no consultation. In fact, they made that very clear. There'd been no consultation, and they said they were deeply concerned. Like my son is a school teacher, and say right, pray God he'll be all right. But see, if you have maybe a husband or a wife who's got diabetes or a heart condition, or God forbid, cancer or something, and you come home and you bring COVID home to that, or a pupil comes home, like how would you fancy being a teacher, Jude, with maybe a compromised partner and going to teach and thinking, I could be bringing back a death sentence to somebody? That's how serious this is. This one is what, 70% more transmissible than by the way, I think our reproduction rate it used to be around less than 1, is now something like 3.5 or something. Now, Jude, that is really genuinely pretty scary.
Same in Britain. But I was wondering, would she have consulted with her leader, her party leader, before she went in there? I suspect that she would have, or what she was planning to say would have had to be run past him. Because, that kind of interview is very sort of high profile. And she was asked about other things than simply, I think, schools. But schools question was a very hot question at that time. And she had a very, very important, she got the line right. So I'm wondering, why don't journalists ask, have you spoken to your leader about this before you come in here?
Well, Jude, I would think so. I don't think any minister's going on a solo run. Jude, the whole thing, if she opens the schools or doesn't open the schools, right, say she doesn't open the schools, the implications for the economy then, if you're a worker and you've got 3 kids at home, you can't go and leave them sitting on their own. There's everything else comes into play. And if you can't go to work, what happens? And like already, Jude, moving on, they're really concerned about the health service because the nurses are exhausted as of now. And if any of them gets COVID, they have to self-isolate for 14 days. Some of their colleagues will have to self-isolate for 14 days. So you just imagine the knock-on effects of all of that.
Well, they kept saying on that prime time last night that the school was a safe environment. I'm not sure how the school would be a safe environment.
I'm not anymore, Jude. This transmissible rate now is way up. Like Jude, when the old one, the statistics sort of proved that there was no big transfer of the disease in a school setting. But they can't say that anymore, Jude. This one is 70% more infectious.
Yeah. So, but it might be that, and still it mightn't be that the schools are responsible for it. I'd like to. I mean, I've heard that phrase so often. Schools are safe environment. I'd like to know, how is it that they're safe? Is it the kids? Well, I think kids, when they get the virus, if they get it, it doesn't affect them particularly much.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it won't affect but you can bring it home to their parents, or bring it home to bring it into a school to a teacher who might be vulnerable.
That's what they were saying on the program. They were saying, but it's the getting there and getting back again that makes it sort of fairly obvious. I would have thought that was.
No, Jude, I think it's quite a serious thing. You're asking teachers to risk their lives. That someone, by the way, just watch the Doyle settings. You know, they're paying something like 25,000 a day for that big building somewhere. I can't remember the name of it. The forum that they're using, and they're sitting way the social distancing, but they're asking a teacher to get into a closed environment with maybe 15, 20, 25, 30 kids, and that's and stay there for 7 or 8 hours.
The thing is, teachers in this can't win. Either they're pressed to go into school, and as you say, they're then at risk of getting it themselves, or bringing it back to somebody at home that could be at risk, or they don't go in, and then they're expected to run their classes through Zoom or whatever, remote learning, virtual learning. Now, those teachers haven't been trained to do that. Nobody knew of this time last year. The farthest thing from everybody's mind was the idea that they would that some classes would be conducted online. Now, I suppose in a way it is good that that's become part of the education system, and it does, I think, offer real opportunities. But you have to have a certain degree of skill. And if you're used to working with kids in a classroom, and now you're faced with working them on a screen, it's a totally different matter.
I've got empirical personal experiences. I was doing a class with migrants up in the Migrants Forum in Derry, and you could reach for a book. This is a book. This is a cup. It's easy. You can, and I drink tea from it's easy to do. And try doing that on Zoom. You're going to have to get up, and you're going to have to try and find something. It doesn't work, Jude. Definitely. I tried it for about a month, and it was exhausting. By the way, I used to do it for an hour. I try and getting across. When people can't see and you can't explain, you need to be able to explain, to teach. You need to be able to explain to them. If I want doing a creative writing, that's no problem. But if you're teaching something there where you need to explain things and you need to illustrate something, you can't do that in Zoom, Jude. How can I start doing stuff here in Zoom now, Jude? As me and you are chatting.
Well, I think, I wouldn't be quite as pessimistic about it. I think it requires a different mindset. To do an analogy, when the movies started, the movies were based on the idea this is really a play, and we're going to photograph it and see people moving around. They very quickly get away from that, and look at all the things you have now in TV or in the movie theaters. The way it works, it's a totally different thing from a theater.
But Jude, if you're trying to a home setting is not the same as a school. You would need all those sort of props to teach in your house.
But Pat, my point is, I think you have to sort of detach yourself from the traditional model of being in the classroom and try to think about this medium in a different way completely. Because I think it does have strengths as well. Now, I'm not saying that I know what they all are, but it clearly has potential. And, I think maybe there are people who are expert in this should be giving teachers courses in this for a week or for a day or whatever, so that they are comfortable with it at least. And maybe they're able to avail of some of the good things that it can offer. I think I know there's a problem in England anyway, that many of the kids who are most in need of encouragement and guidance and help and support, they're the kind of kids that stop appearing when the learning is virtual. They just don't even go to the TV. They don't, or not to the TV, but to the computer. And they just drop out. And if they're in your class, you have some chance you can go down to them and talk to them. But in this setting, virtual setting, very difficult. They fall off the ledge and they're never seen again. Anyway, it's a pretty rough one. I'd still come back to the 2 points with regards to that prime time thing and teachers going in or teachers not going in. One was, if the Minister for Education didn't consult the unions, that should have been made crystal clear. And the interviewer should have followed that very important point up and made it clear. I wasn't clear at the end. She seemed to say at the beginning, the interviewer, oh yes, you haven't consulted the unions. And then she said, oh, yeah, I have. I was none the wiser at the end. It just seems to be absurd. Journalists are investigating.
It's clear she hadn't consulted the unions. It's beyond question. They didn't come on. And by the way, they had to do a U-turn afterwards because the unions wouldn't play ball with them. So if she had consulted with them, she wouldn't have had to do a U-turn.
The interviewer should have shamed her on that. I mean, ministers of education, ministers of anything, shouldn't be allowed to come on to a TV program and tell what amounts to a lie.
Yeah.
And be allowed to walk away from it. I mean, I think that's very shoddy journalism.
To repeat myself, the facts clearly show she hadn't because she had to do a U-turn.
The other thing, as I say, the first question they should ask is, have you consulted your leader on this? So you don't, I mean, the fact of the matter is, if it went badly, really badly, the leader of the party could then hang that minister out to dry.
Yeah.
Whereas if you establish quite quickly that they've consulted or talked to the leader before they go in, that becomes an impossibility. And in fact, it ties the guy with whom the buck stops into the situation as well as the individual minister.
Well, okay. I presume there's very few solo runs when it comes to this. Go ahead.
Yeah. Right. Again, I'd get it out in the open rather than just allow it to sort of wobble about in the background. Okay. I was looking at a site called breakingnews.ie. And one of the stories, and I mean, a lot of newspapers and so on have done this too, was the shooting of George Gichenko, I think he's called, by the police, by the Gardaí. A man appeared, he had a knife, and then he was shot dead. And he was black. Any comments? That's happening in your state, your jurisdiction, Pat?
Jude, something, there's a wee bit of me feels a wee bit uncomfortable about it. This guy, it's been turned into a bit of a battlefield on social media as well. A lot of the right-wing people in this state said, that he had 28 previous convictions, that he slashed a shop worker in the face and all that sort of stuff. None of it is true. Zero of it's true. This guy has apparently, like a lot of people, and he had mental health issues, and he had some problem in the past, a minor thing. But what it seems to have been that he had pure and simply, like a lot of people, a mental health issue. Now, why the Gardaí had to shoot him dead does concern me. I don't understand. He had a knife, and apparently he was threatening. I'm not sort of downplaying that, but something strikes me is, it was a knife. It wasn't a submachine gun. It wasn't a gun. And the other thing is, it sounds so stupid, but surely if these guys are so highly trained, if they had to shoot him, surely there's such a thing as a non-fatal shooting. And I'm not justifying or even suggesting, but surely there's some way that you shoot somebody in the leg to disable them, to get the knife out of their hand, something.
Well, I the only sort of source I can go to for that is a guy who was in the British Army. It was in my last book of interviews where we were talking about Brexit and the border, and he was talking about the fact that he had joined the British Army and he had learned to shoot at a target. And when he went to the border to guard the border, that was what they had in mind. If he identified a target, you shoot until that target no longer presents a threat of any kind. In other words, he said, this idea of shooting people in the legs or in the arms, forget it. You shoot at the target till you stop it and being capable of doing anything.
But hold on, Jude, now, wait a minute. With the greatest respect, your man's talking bullshit, because here's the thing. If there's 8 or 10 Gardaí sitting around one man, they are not under threat. They have the superior numbers. They are also armed. Surely they're, I'm not downplaying it. I wasn't there. I don't know. But, but the circumstances do sort of can worry me or concern me, and I think it sends out a bad signal. This guy had a mental illness and he had a knife. Now, surely heavily armed people and Gardaí could have diffused the situation without the guy being dead. That's the point I'm trying to make. Yeah.
I quite agree with you. I mean, a couple of things spring to mind, like pepper spray. Maybe you couldn't get too close enough to do that, but I'd be surprised that it wouldn't be something that you could sort of squirt at them that would make life very difficult. CS gas, for God's sake, would make it pretty difficult. The second thing is, I mean, even something as primitive as a big long stick. A big long pole.
There's something that that disarms them without killing them.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I'm just wondering, is there any connection in terms of mindset among the Gardaí here with the Black Lives Matter thing in the States? Do they see the police as being an embattled species and they identify with them and they're not going to take it?
Not at all. The Gardaí and the Republic of Ireland are of the people. They're a civilian sort of service. They're not armed by and large. And if you walk in any town and village, the cops sitting chatting to people by and large, or they used to, not so much now because they drive in, drive out these days. But they were part of the community. This is not an embattled community. So I don't think that any sort of psychological thing about we're under threat here, Jude. No, that's not part. Maybe around certain parts of Dublin, I can't answer that, but certainly not in rural Ireland.
But one of the things that strikes me, I mean, and this is getting off the point, maybe better go to our final item, but the one of the things we used to get here when the RUC was the police service and the police force, and even with the PSNI, is some young guy steals a car, hijacks a car, or pinches it and starts driving recklessly. The cops chase him, and on more than one occasion, the young guy smashes into a wall or a bridge or whatever and is killed. That seems to me, I suppose, police taking it on themselves to say, look, there's us and there's them. This little bugger's not going to be allowed to do this, and we're going to get him, and there's the thrill of the chase, and you chase him till you get him. I think that's highly dangerous, me
and my wife have had this discussion many times. She takes the exact same view as you do. I don't. I'm sort of saying, if every time somebody steals a car and the cops just say, I'll let them go, see if it's your car and see if it's somebody else's. Where do you stop? That these guys say, there's no consequences. Let's,
no, Pat, that doesn't stand up. The cops have got.
I know you're going to say, we'll eventually get them.
Cops are all over the place. So a kid steals a car in Coleraine, right? And he's heading for Limavady. The police in Coleraine can ring the police in Limavady and say there's a car such and such is coming your way. This guy's driving it. See if you can stop him. So all I have to do is put a spike across the road or whatever, or have a series of lorries, or just make it impossible for the guy to pass. I mean, why don't police
but hold on, that's tying up half a police force for maybe one guy when someone else is going on. Plus the fact, no, Jude, I don't agree with that. That's just too simplistic in my humble opinion.
Well, you wouldn't you don't take two policemen to do that, Two policemen to do that. And it might save a young guy's life.
But so in other words, you sort of right. Every time a car is stolen, you just sort of say it's somebody else's problem, not ours.
That. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I disagree with that. I'm saying use all your forces. It's not just me and my mate here, and we're going to get this guy. It's me and my mate and the rest of the police service working in conjunction. And again, it might only take one guard or two guards or two policemen in Limavady or wherever the next place is. To see to it that guy doesn't go through there. The alternative they've taken is we'll chase him. I mean, that to some extent is giving encouragement to people who would speed. They're saying, look at us, when we speed, we get our man. Well, these kids may say, well, when we speed, we have a lot of fun,
No, I don't agree with you. I think that's almost sort of giving people the right to sort of go and steal cars and there's no consequence. No, I know that's not what you're saying, but I'm saying that's for me that's something that they're allowed to get away because the cops won't chase us.
Okay, well, leave it at that. I mean, the one thing I would agree with is that these guys stealing cars, and certainly if they're doing it in built-up areas, they're not just joyriders, as they're called. They're death drivers, you know.
Exactly.
They've killed more than one young person.
Absolutely.
Anyway, final story. Well, not a story at all. You've suggested this, Pat. You said, what is on the telly worth looking at? Any suggestions?
No, I know what I'm finding myself doing. There's so little on that I'm actually starting to read again. That's not the television. No, I know it's a perennial complaint, but there's so little on this time, and there's nothing but repeats. It's just non-stop. In fact, maybe it's COVID, but Jude, every program of mine, I'm halfway through it and I go, I've seen this before.
But Pat, I do that too, but I mean, I actually don't mind. When I was a kid, I used to read P.G. Wodehouse, and I'd read the same book 3 times because I knew I was going to enjoy it, you know. My wife started watching The Sopranos again, and now she doesn't like the violence of The Sopranos, but she enjoyed the first episode. She said it's just superb.
I so believe it.
I mean, I did a bit of thinking about this, and I was thinking of what series are worth going back to, and I'll give you a list of 3 or 4 here. Better Call Saul, I think, is superb at times. Superb. So you could make your way through that, even if you've seen them before. To do it again,
I've never seen them at all.
Hot. Oh, watch it. The guy playing Saul is brilliant. His real name is Jimmy McGinty or something. It's brilliant. Better Call Saul, The Sopranos, of course. I mean, that's the Shakespeare of TV series. Breaking Bad. What a series. What a series. Now, the one that I wouldn't, one other I would mention is Cheers. I have always loved Cheers.
I have always loved Cheers.
And even though it seems smudgy and old and, you know, it just looks very unprofessional almost. It's brilliant. The dialogue is so good. The one thing I've never watched, actually, and my kids have watched, and they talk about it in the same way that they talk about The Sopranos, is The Wire. You watched The Wire?
That's my youngest son's favorite program, I think, ever. He said it as absolutely brilliant.
Have you watched it?
No, I haven't watched any of these. None of them.
Wow, Pat,
maybe I'm. But I sat down last night and watched. I sat down last night and watched Tea with Mussolini. Excuse me, which was very good. The thing I enjoyed over Christmas was what do you call her, Jennifer Saunders? No, Dawn French, and the story of Roald Dahl and meeting what do you call her?
No, I didn't see that. Yeah, I saw a trailer.
It was very good. It was very good.
They're both very interesting people. Roald Dahl particularly. But I can't believe. Is there a reason why you have not seen Better Call Saul or The Sopranos or Breaking Bad?
I think it must be ADHD because you have to come up to watch the series.
No, you don't.
I like the one-off programs when it's over. I used to sit and watch The Mentalist, which I used to thoroughly enjoy. No, it was a guy. He was his wife had been killed, and he was working his way through to find it. It was brilliant. But each story, each segment was. There was a follow-on, but a completion of a story each time. There was a story within a story, but that was brilliant. But that's years ago since I watched that.
Well, there's my 3. I've given 3 or maybe even 4. Better Call Saul, The Sopranos, Breaking Bad, maybe Cheers, and there's hundreds of others. And even if you've seen something before, it does no harm. It's like a book. You've got books, that you would pick up and you'd read it again because it's so good. And those 3 I mentioned are definitely worthwhile. There was a final point I was going to make there, but I've forgotten what it was. It was a brilliant point. I know that, to bring this to a close. Anyway,
okay,
Pat,
Jude.
Okay, enjoy your weekend.
And you.
And we shall be in touch. Thank you.
We shall be in touch.